Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really complex story, how the United States and Venezuela went from being pretty close partners to basically bitter enemies. It's a wild ride involving oil, ideology, and a truly spectacular economic collapse. So, let's get right into it. Okay, just picture this for a second. It's January 2026. U.S. Special Forces have just stormed the presidential palace in Caracas and captured Venezuela's president. A top U.S. official on the ground looks into a camera and says, "We're running this place now." Now that sounds like the plot of a movie, right? But it's the shocking, though plausible, endpoint of this relationship's complete breakdown. So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth did we get here? How does a friendship that lasted for over 150 years just completely fall apart? To really get it, we have to go back, way back, and trace the steps that took this alliance from stable to, well, to the brink of collapse. For most of their history, the whole US-Venezuela relationship was built on one simple, powerful foundation. And for a very long time, that foundation created what you could call a golden age of stability. I mean, we're talking about more than 150 years where things were, well, pretty good. They established ties way back in 1835. Then, in the 1920s, everything changed with the discovery of massive oil reserves, and U.S. investment just flooded in. Even after Venezuela nationalized its oil industry in '76, they stayed crucial partners. Business was booming. And experts have a name for why this friendship worked for so long. They call it the geography, oil, ideology triad. Think about it. Venezuela was in America's strategic backyard. It had the oil the U.S. needed, and during the Cold War, they were on the same team against communism. These three things created a partnership that, while maybe a little unequal, was incredibly durable. But that entire foundation, that whole triad, it was about to get blown to pieces. Because in 1999, one man shows up on the scene and completely flips the chessboard. And that man was Hugo Chavez. After getting elected in 1998, he kicks off his Bolivarian revolution. He seizes control of the oil industry, pours the profits into social programs, and starts making friends with U.S. adversaries like Cuba and Russia. And he was not subtle about it, famously calling the U.S. president the devil at the United Nations. But the real point of no return came in 2002. There was a coup, and Chavez was out of power for just 48 hours. The U.S. immediately recognized the new guys. Well, when Chavez came back, he was absolutely convinced Washington was behind the whole thing. And that one event, right there, cemented his paranoia and really fueled his anti-American fire. But here's the crazy part. Despite all the political drama, the name-calling, the hostility, trade didn't just continue, it exploded. It topped $50 billion in the 2000s. Why? It's simple, really. Oil prices were sky high, and at the end of the day, both countries needed the money. But Chavez's whole economic model, spending oil money as fast as it came in, failing to invest or diversify, it was a ticking time bomb. And when his hand-picked successor, Nicolás Maduro, took over in 2013, the fuse on that bomb was just about to be lit. And the trigger, the thing that set it all off, was a catastrophic crash in global oil prices. Starting in 2014, the price of oil just fell off a cliff. It went from over $100 a barrel to less than $30 by 2016. For a country that depends on oil for pretty much everything, this was an absolute death blow. So, with their only real source of income gone, what did the government do? They just started printing money. And the result was hyperinflation on a scale that is it's almost impossible to comprehend. By 2018, it hit 130,000%. I mean, think about that. Prices were literally doubling every few days. And of course, this wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This triggered a massive humanitarian disaster. People were starving. Hospitals had no medicine. This sparked one of the largest refugee crises in the world. By 2024, more than 7.7 million people had fled the country. That's over a fifth of the entire population. And just to put the sheer scale of this economic wipeout into perspective, between 2014 and 2021, the entire Venezuelan economy just evaporated. It shrank by 75%. An economic contraction of that size is almost unheard of in modern history. Now, this is a really important point to understand. The crisis absolutely began from within, with bad policy and the oil crash. But from 2017 onward, the U.S. poured gasoline on the fire with crippling sanctions. These weren't just symbolic. They cut off Venezuela's ability to sell oil and access financial markets, which took a truly desperate situation and made it catastrophic. A collapse of this magnitude never happens in a vacuum, right? It quickly spiraled into this incredibly complex geopolitical mess, with major world powers picking their teams and digging in for a long fight. And what you end up with is this giant international tug-of-war. You've got the US on one side, pulling with sanctions, trying to force regime change. You've got the Maduro regime pulling back, using repression to cling to power. And then, giving Maduro a huge helping hand are China and Russia. They had invested billions in Venezuela and saw a chance to counter US influence, so they propped up the regime with loans and support to protect their investment. All of this creates this incredibly dangerous stalemate that experts call mutual deterrence. Basically, Maduro can't be easily pushed over because he has these powerful friends. But at the same time, the US is afraid to push too hard because if the regime suddenly collapses, you could get a chaotic power vacuum and an even bigger refugee crisis. So everyone is sort of stuck. So, given this impossible deadlock, where does Venezuela possibly go from here? Well, most experts see three potential and very different paths forward. First, there's the optimistic scenario, a negotiated transition, a power-sharing deal maybe, but that's got a medium probability at best. Then you've got the really scary one, a total regime collapse, which could lead to civil war. Thankfully, that's seen as low probability. And then there's the third option, which, unfortunately, is also seen as the most likely. Things just stay as they are. The painful status quo continues. You know, when you look back at these last 25 years, it's really tempting to look for a single villain. But the truth is, it's not that simple. It's a story of compounding crises. Chavez's policies were a house of cards. Maduro's government is corrupt. And U.S. sanctions, whatever their intent, undeniably made life worse for ordinary people. It's just this toxic mix where every decision from every side seemed to make things worse. And that leaves us with this final massive question, a question that will not only define Venezuela's future, but that serves as a really stark warning for any nation rich in natural resources. Can a country that's built its entire identity on oil ever truly escape what's known as the resource curse? Right now, that's a question without an answer.